So I've got some exciting news. I just got a new fishing kayak, and in today's video, I have two main things I want to talk about. Number one, why did I get this kayak? And number two, what are my first impressions? I've taken it out literally one time, so I thought it would be cool to document my first impressions. Obviously, I'm going to continue to take this rig out, and we're going to be able to share more experiences along the way. But what kayak did we get? Well, I actually got the Wilderness Systems Radar 115 with Helix pedal drive. So first and foremost, I have to give a huge shout out to Wilderness Systems because they did actually give this kayak to me for the channel so I can showcase content with it. And I'm really excited to do just that, and that's why we're here today. So a huge round of applause for Wilderness Systems. Thank you so very much for the opportunity. That being said, today I am going to be talking about why I ultimately reached out to them and asked them about this rig, why I ultimately thought this rig was very appealing, and then I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be very transparent about my experience so far because I think that's extremely important. I am not affiliated. I'm not getting paid by Wilderness in any way. I did get the kayak, but from here on forth, it's all transparent and it's going to be documenting my personal experiences with the rig. So with that being said, why did I ultimately reach out to Wilderness Systems about this specific kayak? Here's the thing about the kayak fishing industry, something that is kind of counter to what I'm looking for. Kayaks continue to get bigger and heavier and they turn into basically a boat. And that is really cool if you've got a lifestyle that matches up with that. But I myself don't have a lifestyle that matches up with that because I have a car that I car top my rig on, so I need to be able to lift my kayak. And the second thing is my average fishing trip is usually pretty short, so I want something that's going to be able to get on and off the water with ease. I do not want like crazy extensive rigging. I want simple. Less is more. I want like a minimalistic approach to an extent, but I still want the pedal drive because it gives me a lot of comfort on the water. It gives me the opportunity to really make the most of my time on the water. Pedal drive absolutely is a game changer for fishing kayaks. So I wanted to keep pedals, but I really wanted to downsize my rig from a weight standpoint, and I was willing to sacrifice some storage and some stability. And ultimately, as I browsed the kayak market, like I said, you're seeing a lot of 150, 200 pound kayaks these days. You know, the Radar comes in at 85 pounds, and it was obviously lighter, but it's still an 11.5 foot boat. It's still made with fishing in mind, and I thought that that was really appealing because there's not a lot of rigs that are doing that. So I reached out to Wilderness Systems and we were able to make this work, and I truly, truly appreciate it, like I said. But that's ultimately why I went this route. So I tell you what, this is probably a good time to go to the on the water footage, and then after that we're going to circle back and talk about my first impressions. Let's get to the water.
A little less stable than what I'm used to, but not too bad overall. Definitely a little bit more wobble left to right. That is to be expected. I went after a lighter kayak that has a little bit more keel to it, not as flat on the bottom. That's ultimately gonna make this boat faster, but it's also gonna make it just a little bit more wobbly. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I've got my seat all the way back and it's in the low position, and I have got a ton of leg room. Now, if I was to put the seat in an upright position, that might be a little bit more my comfort zone. Yeah, I like sitting up a little higher. That's gonna be what I probably use more often than not. We just push that down. Okay, I think that's all we have to do. Huh. It's a much like lighter resistance to pedal this than what I'm used to, but it's also got a little bit more wobble left and right based on how it's rigged up. So all in all, it's interesting. We're testing this bad boy out in about 12 or 13 mile an hour of wind. I'm gonna try paddling it a little bit, just see how it feels. Well, the first thing I'll notice, and it's very obvious, is that this is a lighter kayak than what I'm used to. So it's a lot easier to paddle, which is a nice thing. All right, here's something I'm really curious about. I want to see what happens when I push that thing. Okay, interesting. So it just kind of shoots up. but it doesn't come all the way up. Oh, I see. I know. The propeller kept it from going all the way up. There. And now it's gonna go. Okay. So that's all the way up. Interesting. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. I don't like that it's way up here. I don't like that this thing has a little bit of side-to-side wobble. I feel like I tighten these things down super, super tight, but it's got a little bit more give to it. And so while you're pedaling, it kind of just rocks back and forth, and it's just a little uneasy. When it's down in the locked position, I'm a little concerned with what would happen if it banged up against a rock. It's not gonna be able to kick up. Let's put that bad boy back down. Good, okay. It's kind of weird to get used to the rudder control on my right as opposed to my left. It just feels so weird that my legs are kind of, it's not fully fixed. Like you can see that there's a little bit of wobble left and right. And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just a little different feeling. I can pedal really fast backwards. Because this has so much more keel to it, it's a lot more conventional boat build as opposed to a big flat back. I can actually pedal backwards almost as fast as I can pedal forwards. That's wild. My biggest question is what's gonna happen when I run this pedal drive into something shallower? I almost wanna test it just to see, because it is a concern of mine. Like, I guess the thing you have to do is probably like once you start feeling it hit, you probably just wanna hit that with your foot. I'm gonna try to come up on this little bit of sandy area right here and see if I can get it to drag a little bit, just kind of see what happens. Then we're gonna go catch a fish, hopefully. All right, there, it just hit. It just hit. And it stopped my kayak dead in its tracks. And then I just hit that and it jumps up. I don't know that I like that, to be honest with you, because that thing, it doesn't have a way of kicking back up. It's in a locked position. And that's a little concerning. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little concerning. Not sure. Gotcha. Oh my gosh, absolute micro. I need to tighten my drag a little bit. A little micro pulled drag. I've got light line on there, but I think I don't need this fish pulling drag on this setup. Little bluegill is the first fish that I've caught out of this kayak. There you go. All right, second bluegill. There you go, 2 fish. Keeping it rolling with some dinks. Let's go. There's a yellow perch, so we have now caught both bluegill and perch, and then technically a little baby bass. So we've technically caught 3 species out of the rig, so that's kind of neat. There you go, there's an absolute micro bass. Look how fat this fish is though. It's a dink, but it's built like a little micro football. The little baby bass are getting chunky, my friends. They're growing, that's all you can ask. There you go, another little chunky dink. And there you go, my thing is dragging again. I'm gonna have to shoot it up. I mean, I like the fact that you can just push that button very easily to make it shoot back up. That is a nice thing. It's good that they put that button in a very convenient location, and it's quite easy to press. I just don't like the fact that by the time you want to push the button, you might already have a severe problem. If you're on a river or something and you're flowing with the current and you hit a log with this thing, it doesn't matter if you push the button or not, you've already done the damage. I think you could definitely have a lot of fun on this kayak in the river. I just would opt to do the paddle version of it. I don't think I would take the pedals. That would be concerning to me. What do we got here? Another dinky bass. Is this all like this year's babies or what? I don't know how long does it take for a bass to get to this size? Because here we are, it's coming in on July, and these fish are all about this size. Are these from last year or are they from this year? I don't think they get big that fast, but maybe those are from this year. I really just don't feel like I have the turning radius with this kayak as I'd like. Just doesn't feel like that rudder's giving me quite enough control. One thing that I'm considering doing is replacing the wire that hooks this control system to my rudder. And if I use something a little heavier gauge, I'm curious if it'll give me just a little bit better control, because I am not in love with like just the kind of, I don't know how to explain it, kind of just like a soft control. It just does not feel like what I'm looking for. Look at this, watch. Man, that should be a big enough gap, but I just barely clear it. This thing just does not have a turning radius that I like. A little bit better. Hey, crappie. There we go. Another species. There you go. We've caught bass, perch, bluegill, and now crappie. There you go. It's a multi-species rig, my friends. It is going to serve our multi-species fishing needs. It has proven it today. 4 species in about an hour fishing trip so far. Not too bad, not too bad. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and put the fishing pole away, and I'm just gonna spend the next 10 minutes playing around with the rig a little bit, getting a little bit more acquainted with it. It's obviously new and different, and it's just gonna take some time to get used to.
Okay, so that was obviously just a pretty simple little trip. Didn't catch anything too crazy, but we were able to get a little bit acquainted with the rig. And I gotta say, this is a really cool kayak, and I wanna talk about some of the things that I really personally like. The first thing, and definitely like what I feel like was the most noticeable for me because I'm 6'6", this thing has crazy leg room. If you're a taller person and you're looking for a fishing kayak, this one is really built to cater to people that want like front storage, front, leg room. I was really surprised. You could put that seat way back and my legs aren't even touching. Like I could literally position myself to where I can't even touch the pedal drive. That's incredible. That's really cool that they make a rig that's able to do that, because there's not a lot of kayaks that actually give that kind of leg room, especially with 11.5 feet. The other thing is, from a comfort standpoint, I really like the seat. It's got 2 positions. You can do low, you can do high. I liked the high for pedaling, and then I like the low if I'm paddling. Just very comfortable. It's a really nice seat, so I got to give them credit for that. After that, I would say kind of the outfitting, the rigging, I think they did a really good job. Given the fact that this is not necessarily a giant kayak, I feel like with the gear tracks and just some of the ways that they outfitted this rig, I feel like it gives you a lot of options as an angler to kind of make it your own and to do what you want with the space. So I thought that that was really good. And then lastly, one of the other things that really stood out to me is it paddled really nicely. This kayak was very smooth. I liked the keel on it. I felt like it was an easy kayak to paddle given the size of it. There's a lot of kayaks out there that are going to paddle smoother, but they're generally lighter kayaks that are not as much made for kayak fishing. Generally, when you get into those heavier fishing kayaks, the paddling is not as smooth. And so this one really paddled nicely. So I do like that. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that I am actually concerned about. And I'm going to be very honest here. Really, there's 2. The first one is very minimal, and it's not actually a big concern. It's just something I would change, is the back storage is kind of just a square. I feel like it could be a little bit wider and just give a little bit more room to store things in that back compartment. Not a huge deal. It fits a crate. It just fits a crate really snug. And I would like to have just a little bit more space on the sides. But again, that's kind of nitpicky. And the reality is this is a smaller kayak. So, you kind of have to there's some pros and cons, right? So that doesn't really bother me, but it is something that I wish I could just get a little bit more storage. The second thing, and absolutely the more important of the 2, is really just about the pedal drive system. I need to go out and use it more before I make too many calls here, but my first impressions, I'm a little concerned. There's a couple things that I want to talk about there. Number one, I think the rudder is just not built with the same sturdiness, I think, as some of the other rudder designs on the market. I felt like I wasn't getting the same turning radius as a lot of other kayaks that I've used. I just felt like I didn't have the same level of control. And I think that's really important. You know, a rudder is very simple, but at the end of the day, it's very important when it comes to pedal drive kayaks because that is ultimately your steering. So I'm going to play around with it a little bit more. Who knows, maybe I'll be able to figure it out. But for right now, it just doesn't feel like it gives me quite the same control over my rig as some of my other options. The second thing with the pedal drive is really just the pedal drive itself. So this rigs up in a vertical position and basically click a button and it shoots up. I'm a little concerned with the fact that when you get it down there, it locks into place. You know, if you were to find me on a river and I'm going down current and that pedal drive was to catch on a rock or a tree or something, I have a lot of concerns that that could either damage the rig, you know, break the pedal drive somehow, maybe flip the kayak, and that's not what you want to do. So I need to probably play around with it a little bit, but it is definitely a concern. The other thing is just the pedal drive in general felt a little bit wobbly. It doesn't feel like this kayak was necessarily built around a pedal drive, whereas I think a lot of the competitors are kind of making the pedal drive a huge part of the kayak and they're kind of building the kayak around it, whereas I feel like they kind of retrofitted a pedal drive option for this rig. And again, it's not necessarily bad, it's just that I think there might be some other designs out there that are a little bit more thoughtful about how they put that together. Ultimately, like I said, I've still got some testing to do. I've taken this thing out one time for a short period of time, so I'm not going to sit here and be too nitpicky yet. You can count on me to continue to talk about my experiences as I fish in this kayak. So stay tuned. If you're not already subscribed, make sure to click subscribe below. If you have any questions or feedback along the way, please leave those in the comments below. Truly appreciate you watching. I'm really excited, and I gotta say, last but not least, thank you again to Wilderness Systems. This opportunity would not have happened without them. So everybody, thank you to Wilderness Systems. Truly appreciate you supporting this channel. All right, we'll catch you next time.